Welcome, everyone. I am so glad to see you back. My name is Farney Fernell, and together we're here to deliver a refreshing and insightful midday, just in time session meant to set you up for greater productivity and micro earnings. So, happy New Year. Happy New Year. Oh, it looks like our slides moved ahead. Happy New Year. I'm happy to see everyone back. Last year, we started our segment, Leadership COGS, with two really exciting sessions. And right now, as we come back in 2025, we are in the second week of 2025, and I'm hoping that you have a feeling of control and a feeling of focus as you start your 2025. Today, just in case you're not 100% there, our session today is dedicated to getting you focused and getting you started thinking about what's big for you this year. Welcome again to Leadership COGS, and we're talking about dreaming bigger. Quick look back again. COGS stands for celebration, ownership, glue, and the stretch. And our discussion today is going to be focused on that G, or the glue. Last week I was working with a team in New York, and I asked a few of them about their goals for this year. And not surprisingly, many of them shared that they were working on getting more physically fit or attaining some kind of a certification, a promotion. And over dinner, ironically enough, I had a discussion with a CEO, and he shared that his intention for the year was around succession or getting himself ready and his team ready for him to move on. And what I realized what was consistent about all of these shares was this: each person was somewhat sheepish about what they shared. It was almost as if they doubted that what they were saying was actually okay. They doubted that they even had the ability or the permission to dream in that way. It was almost as if it was not okay to be in the world with that same thought and to put that thought out. They were stuck. They were stuck either having the courage to share their big dream, their goal, or their intention, or they were stuck in even allowing themselves to dream at all. And what appeared to me in my simple request, it felt like a simple request. It actually wasn't. It wasn't simple at all. It put them in a place to think about something that they passively thought about, but they never actually shared out loud. So I'm just wondering, with the folks that we have in our session today, or for those that might join us remotely later, is that you? Is that you, that you have a goal or an intention that you haven't yet shared with the world? It might have been a fleeting thought, or it's something that you want that you may not have allowed to exist outside of your mind. Is that you? And feel free to put that in the chat. In fact, I invite you in the chat to share one of your big dreams. If you haven't done it before, I invite you to do that here with us live. So, our discussion today is about dreaming bigger. And we're going to talk through a couple things. What are the differences between intentions versus goals? We're going to talk about getting the permission to dream at all. And lastly, we're going to talk about how do we make it practical? Because it's one thing to be in the space of dreaming, but it's a whole separate thing to be in the space of activation. So even if you get yourself to the dream, how do you get yourself to the activation so you don't meet the many others who, in just about a week from now, will stop doing what they said they wanted to do for the year? It's called Quitter's Day. But we're not gonna be in quitter's mode. Let's talk about making it happen. So let's start with those intentions. So what we know about intentions are like the GPS. It's setting a direction. So just like you might get in your automobile, or you might get, you're about to take the train and you put that into Google and you say, where do I want to go? And it tells you turn by turn instructions. Intentions do exactly that. They set the GPS for the direction that you want to move in. They often feel softer and they're less punitive than goals. Again, they're directional. When you think about goals, goals are really outcome driven. So goals focused on value, and they oftentimes reflect how you want to feel or grow during a journey. So they're discrete. I'm going here. And I'm sure many of you have heard the acronym for SMART goals and say, oh, specific, measurable, right? Attainable, time. You want all of that to be tied up in your goals. They're very, very specific. But what we find is that when we jump straight to goals, sometimes what happens is that you're at a goal and it feels very big and you don't even know where to start yet. So you have the goal, you've inherited the goal. Maybe inside your organization, you've been assigned goals that have rippled down from your senior management. If that's you, feel free to raise your hand right now. That might be you. You've inherited goals from somewhere, and you may feel uncomfortable having done so. And that's okay. That's completely okay. It feels big. How do we break that down so you don't stay stuck in that G? You don't stay in the glue. I invite you today to soften that up just a little bit. Soften your big, big goal with a date tied to it, with resources, limited resources likely tied to it. Soften it up and set an intention. Set an intention for how you want to feel. Set an intention for how you want your teams to feel. If there's something here, if there's someone here, I see few folks that have just recently joined. Welcome. If you have an intention for this year, feel free to drop that in the chat or speak into the space. I welcome you to do that. I invite you to share those intentions or just think about how is it that you want to feel and what are the indicators that you might experience that tell you you are on course. So this softens up the goal a lot. You've inherited a goal. Maybe you have a goal for yourself, but it feels big. And over the past couple weeks of January, a week and a half of January, you've already seen yourself stumble. You missed a date. Or if you were trying to do something every day, you only did it once or three times a week, and then you already feel failure. I invite you today to rather think about, no, oh my gosh, I'm already failing. I'm not going to be good at this, to shift your focus to what direction do I want to be moving in? So I know a lot of folks have goals. Again, in that group that I spoke to just last week, several people shared that they had fitness goals or they had promotion goals. And some of those fitness goals, oh, I want to lose this or I want to be able to have this kind of energy. And that was great. How do you know you're moving in that direction? It could be the amount of time that you put in, like, oh, yeah, I want to work out every day. But is that the real evidence of how you feel? You're working out every day, but if it feels like a grind, that may have a shift on your physical health, but your mental health, what's happening there? So, how is it that you want to feel about what you're doing? And where can you find that satisfaction? So, if it's not the literal thing that you're looking at, I want this. If there's a shift in the circumstance that the this exists in, that you know that you're still on course. You're still on course. Let's shift a little bit. So, as I talked about the intentions and I'm talking about the goals, what I really want to know is if you have given yourself permission to dream. I feel free to share this in the chat. What actually excites you? If you've never done this before, if you've never asked yourself the question, you've joined I see several of us here today. You joined for a reason. Ask yourself this question now. What excites you? And if there were no limits, what would your life or what would your career look like? What would it actually look like? What would be different? And if you don't feel comfortable sharing that right now, whip out a piece of paper. I've got a paper here. Whip out a piece of paper and just jot that down for yourself. Because by simply writing it, you're beginning the psychological work that's required to believe and to own, like the O in COGS, to own that dream. It can't exist if you don't give it space to exist. So I invite you to write that down right now. If you want to type it in the chat, do that. But put it somewhere. What excites you, and if there were no limits, what would your life or what would your career look like? What I'm alluding to right now is the power of visualization. When we're getting ready for something, the something could be something significant. If you're getting ready for, I'm going to use a personal example, and getting ready for a holiday party. We just came into the new year. Some of you might have had holiday parties. If you're getting ready for a party, you get ready. You know what you're going to wear. If you're hosting, you know what you're going to prepare. If you're getting ready for a team meeting, the same thing applies. The same thing applies. Before you walk into that team meeting, before you walk into that one-on-one meeting, before you show up to work in the morning, and if you're virtual, before you log in, visualize what you want that day, that meeting, that interaction to look like. This is the power of visualization. When you imagine what could happen and set your intention on what you want to happen, you are preparing yourself for the outcome. Not just physically by getting the agenda ready for that day or getting the document prepped with all the right answers in the document so everyone can see it. It's getting yourself prepped for how you're going to speak to people in the space that you're going to share, for what your posture is going to be like if you are physically sharing a space, with what you're going to say and also what you're not going to say. All of it. You have an opportunity to prepare yourself and visualize and give yourself permission to be different. If you typically go into a team meeting and then you kind of sheepishly sit in the back, or you stay quiet, or you stay off camera when you're on Zoom or on Teams or in Google Meet, you stay silent, but you wish you would have said, or you might just put in the chat instead of speaking into the space. Yet you walk away from the meeting and feel like you really weren't there. You weren't contributing as you would have wanted to contribute. You didn't leave a mark that you wanted to mark, or someone else said what you were thinking. If that happens to you, just raise your hand. It happens to many of us. You leave and you're like, I wish I would have. I just could have, but you didn't. And you left an impression that actually is like a big eraser. It's not an impression. You didn't leave an impression. It's like, oh, such and such, it's really quiet. So as we think about permission to dream and permission to engage and permission to visualize and live into how we really want to be, this is that. Setting an intention for what you want your reality to be. So let's come back to that meeting. I want to be more confident. There are many that I heard say that. I want to be more confident when it's my turn to talk. Evidence of that confidence could be that you talk at all. So setting the intention for I want to be more so my direction is the direction of confidence. And the micro movement that I might take to get there might be to say one thing in the meeting. And the first time you join the meeting, it might be, "Hi everyone," and that's all you say. The next time you join the meeting, it might be, "Hi everyone," and you might have something about the status or something about the reason they invited you to the meeting, which is the content. And that's evidence that you are moving towards your goal of confidence. Let's come to another goal. Some people have a goal of, I have this big project that I'm implementing or I'm leading. And my goal is to get that project implemented this year. So a project is big, a project lasts a long time, and then project comes to an end. So what does your success criteria look like in between to tell you you're still on track with getting that project in? You might say, oh, a project schedule. Yeah, that's great. But what is your personal success criteria that tells you you're still on track? Does it mean when you engage with stakeholders that they actually respond? So it's the how, it's the intention, it's the direction. I want this thing to be implemented, but how? Fill in the blank with a team that is engaged and excited to be part of this work. Fill in that blank. And every time somebody chimes in or has status for you or shows up to your meetings, instead of saying, oh, I'm busy, that's a demonstration that you are on the path of your intention and that you're seeing the nuggets, the fruits of your labor, the fruits, the evidence that that intention is more than just an intention, that you're still on the right path to your goal. Let's move on to your compass. Again, what are your dreams? And if you don't have them and you didn't give yourself permission even yet, jot them down or make them up. Go ahead and do that. And I want to tell you just four things that might make your goals, your intentions, your dreams actually happen this year. So before we get to Quitter's Day, let's talk about not getting to Quitter's Day and being one of the quitters. Four small things that you can do to begin to make your dreams, your goals, your intentions start to manifest for you, and not passively, but actively. We'll start with one. Get comfortable with a little bit of discomfort. And I'm not saying big discomfort like, oh, I just hate getting up in the morning because the toll, the tax, the work ahead of me is so big. No, get comfortable with micro discomfort. So if you're trying something new, say this week, I'm only going to be 10% less comfortable than I was last week. Say this week, when I show up into that team meeting, I'm going to ask one question, not 10. This week is going to be something different. Set that intention. I saw someone in the chat say, I'd like to be more assertive. So I love that that's where we are. So this week, if assertive is big and I can visualize someone that I think is really assertive, and that's my goal, to be closer to that, pick one small thing to do this week. And that might be when someone asks me for something, I'm either going to say not right now, or I'm going to say something different, but I'm going to set the intention that I have a response and I don't feel like I'm receiving, and I can't say no to anything. So this week, I'm going to say, let me think about that. And that might be you being more assertive. So the first thing, get comfortable being a little bit uncomfortable. The second thing is aligning your actions with your aspirations. Now, this sounds silly. Aligning actions with aspirations, but I always use this example. If you are setting your intentions that you want to be more assertive or some other version, I'm not using that because that's what was shared today, on your calendar, on your Outlook calendar because we live and breathe by them during the course of a workday. Most people do, right? Your calendar, your Google Calendar, your Outlook calendar, whatever tool you're using, you have a calendar. Where on that calendar have you identified where you're practicing and where you are going to be uncomfortable? Map it out, just like you would map out key tasks and key deliverables and all the meetings that you have to go to. They're on your calendar. Put that there too. Put that there. Today I will fill in the blank. Put your actions tend to be things that you do on your calendar. Align them with your aspirations. So your aspirations become one of the things that you're doing. Next, number 3, be clear on what it is that you're actually working towards. So just saying, I want to, a lot of people have fitness goals, right? Or a lot of intentions around being healthy or greater wellness. You have those goals and you have that intention. You want greater wellness. But what does that actually mean in terms of how you live? So, what are you feeling? Define the change in your own terms. So, that could mean, oh, I want to have better wellness. And that means I get 8 hours of sleep or 7.5 hours of sleep. So, I'm going to start to measure how many times I get 7.5 hours of sleep because that means greater wellness. And if you find after a month of 7.5 hours sleep that you actually need 8, then that's okay because you're not stuck on the number. You're stuck that you're doing it and you're clear on what you think that goal looks like. Because as you start walking towards it, it might shift, and that's completely okay too. So be clear on what you're working towards. If in the project example where you're working on a project and it's important that you land that project this year, what is it what does it mean to land the project? Is it the project and your client is happy or your stakeholders are happy? Or is it the project and everything else that everyone's asking for that's really out of scope? So here with this number 3, I'm encouraging you to think about what's out of scope for your big dream. When you say you want greater wellness, you can't do everything. So what are the first few things that you're doing? Filter it. What are the first few? Because the C in COGS is celebration. You want to be able to celebrate something often. And you can only celebrate if you're experiencing that success because it's small enough that it's a bite-sized piece and you can digest it and feel the fruits of that labor. And then lastly, number 4, check on your progress. Again, I mentioned this a moment ago. Manage what you measure. You can check on your progress. And what this looks like, for example, for me, when I'm working on something, I actually have just a side note, 5-year journal, right? Like these things, you can get them on Amazon, a 5-year journal. And every day what are the 3 or 4 things that you're working on? You get to jot down yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Mine are REMS. So my acronym is REMS. That's what it comes out to, REMS. And one is relax. The R is relax. The E is exercise or energy. I do an energy check. The M is meditation, and the S is spirituality or belief. What do I believe I can actually do today? Those are mine. But how are you checking your progress? If you have a wellness goal, how are you checking? How do you know you're still on track if you've never tracked? Okay? Check your progress often. So if this is a team lead or a team member or you're leading a group, what this looks like is if you have a status meeting with your team, what are those things that you're checking on? And if you're not checking on progress at your status meetings, then chances are you don't know how you're doing and you don't know if you're making progress. So for those of you that are working on individual goals or individual intentions, conduct your personal status meeting, okay? And if you're not comfortable with a personal status meeting, you are invited to join us here, Leadership COGS. That's what we're doing here. We are celebrating, we are growing our ownership, we're identifying where we get stuck and where there's a glue and where we're going to stretch. And that's the S. That's what we're identifying when we come here. So I think there's another note in the chat, and let's see if I can see. I see a question. So, what's a process or approach to come up with these measurements? Well, part of that, you can use COGS, to be honest with you. You can use COGS. Your measurement, what is one thing that's important to you, and apply COGS to it. So how can you celebrate what that thing is? And you determine how frequently you want to do this check. So how can you celebrate what it is that you're working on? Where are you taking greater ownership? So if you're working on wellness and you're trying to get more sleep because you know when you're well slept, you show up great at work, then where can you take more ownership in that sleep cycle? That you turn off the television, or you turn off the whatever, or you turn down the household at a certain time. How can you take greater ownership? Lou, where are you stuck? So does that mean that you need some support in either starting your day earlier or ending it earlier? Where do you need more support and you need to ask for something? The G is, how can you stretch? What is stretching you so you feel the muscle building and the resilience that you will experience should you practice this? So thank you for that question. So we are gonna wrap up, and I thank so many of you for joining today. It has been great having you here, and I'll be back on January 27th for another episode of Leadership COGS. And that day, we're going to have a guest. Our topic for the day is going to be, you have what you need already to win. And I want you guys to join because all of us have what we need already to win more often. In the meantime, don't forget, you can catch this session and many more on demand anytime through the app. If you have any questions, I'm going to hang out. We're going to stop the recording. I'm going to hang out. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can reach me at farnia@lenserfgroup.com. Thanks again for being here. Take care and be well.